46 minutes past the hour of 7, and you're still watching Sunrise at Sea. We continue with the conversation of the girl empowerment, but also we are coming to you live on GoTV on channel 833 and Star Times on channel 248. Now, before we start off the conversation, of course, I am joined by my colleague Sandra Kopp, and earlier on the Twitter jabs, when we're looking through the tweets, we're talking about girl empowerment. But I think that it is also very important and profound that people understand, first of all, what empowerment is. And I'll read this out. According to an Oxford dictionary, it says empowerment means the authority or power given to someone to do something. Well, when you join girl and empowerment together, it means giving the girl child authority or power given to them to be able to do something. But my first question would be, how best can we actually empower this girl child, apart from going to school? Because I'm sure there's so many initiatives that we could put into place to empower the girl child, minus just looking at education alone.
I think it all depends on how you view education, because I feel that education is just not confined to the walls of a classroom.
Absolutely.
Especially we learned this during the pandemic, and right now also navigating as the curve has lowered of the pandemic. We need to be able to empower people to do what they want, because education is formal and there's also informal education. We had informal education before the institutions that were imposed by the colonialists of education, I beg your pardon. But yes, I think we can empower the girl child also to be able to, they can be leaders in small, how can I put this, in the family setting, yes, to give them those responsibilities. Most boys are given certain responsibilities, like, no, this is for the boy. The girl is not supposed to do this. I guess gender roles are really like a huge problem when it comes to that, because they confine girls into this small box
to make them think that they're supposed to behave and do certain things. But also, I think it is very important that also, even while we're talking about empowerment of the girl child should be empowered to know the kind of power that they possess, the kind of energy and strength that they possess. But you mentioned something very important, and you talked about informal education. And of course, there are two types of education. There's the formal and the informal. However, these days, usually parents who decide to take their children for informal education, if it is not an issue of lack of funds, they do it as a form of punishment to the girl child. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. The girl gets pregnant, so you take her off having the formal education, and then you take her on to have the informal education. What do I mean? The girl is in school, she gets pregnant. Then as a form of punishment, you tell her you're going for tailoring. Why do we make this learning, why do we make it look like it's a punishment to learn a certain skill? Why do we demonize these institutions? Because I have seen parents who do that to their own children. Because if this is something that your child was not thinking about from the word go, why are you patronizing them by telling them, okay, this and this happened, for that matter, therefore, you're going to go to this institution and you're going to do catering? Because these are life skills that can actually help a girl child.
That is true, but I think they're not demonizing to an extent. They are demonizing these institutions, but the root of the problem here is they are demonizing pregnancies. They are treating this girl who has become pregnant, like she's, I don't know, used goods, so to speak. So they don't really want to spend that much on her to put her back into mainstream education, because they feel she cannot amount to anything. So just do this and then just carry on with your life. And I feel that is the issue here. We should stop demonizing teenage pregnancies. Yes, it does happen. We are also not condoning it, but it does happen. And if not now, a time than ever, is we have had about 100,000 girls become pregnant in these 2 years. So you tell me, I think this has been the turning point. Like, we have to change our mindset. These things do happen, but when they do happen, let us think of other avenues to do this. I mean, we have been having adult education schools for a while now.
Yes.
Where adults, they go back and then they continue with their education and they graduate. Yes, and they have flourishing careers. We have had that. So why don't we think about that also for teenage mothers? if they feel a certain type of way going back to school after they have had a baby, then why don't we think of schools such as that for teenage mothers? Yes, they can have nursing places where they can nurse their babies, and then they can continue with mainstream education. I do not think all these other institutions like catering, carpentry, and all that, I mean, these are life skills. And let me tell you, these are the people who were able to navigate this pandemic.
Yes.
People are not going to office, but you still needed food. There was this person who would come like to our estate and cook meals for people. So they go from house to house and they cook like for a week, and then they just put the food in the fridge like that. They were making money. People are not going to offices, so we should also not undermine these institutions, but we should not demonize teenage pregnancies.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely. I think the conversation of girl empowerment could go on and on, but I think it is also very important that at the end of the day, even while we're talking about empowering the girl child, they should be given a seat at the table, the girls themselves, because that is the only way we can actually get to know what they are going through, and then themselves they could be able to give solutions. However, joining us at the center of this conversation, and she is on standby, is none other than Honorable Nakiwala Kiyingi, and she's the Minister of State for Youth and Children Affairs. Well, she was appointed in that position on the 6th of June 2016. She is also the Federation of Uganda Football Association's third vice president, the first woman to hold that position in Uganda. Looking at some of her achievements, well, when it comes to the children's section, well, she provided psychosocial support and basic care to 5 million orphans as well as vulnerable children. She commenced the construction of Moroto Remand Home Phase 1 and Phase 2. She also completed construction of Kabale Remand Home, that is Phase 2, as well as received and handled and closed 190,000 child abuse cases through the child helpline, of which 3,982 were child abuses, and also counseling inquiries, among others. And she's on standby. Honorable, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You are live on SEETv. How are you doing this morning? Can you hear me?
How are you? And then I have to say hello to the people seeing SEETv. Good morning, everyone. I'm not surprised that everybody is looking at SEETv because one, it came in this kind of vibe, and looking at the sporting arena, because if you want to go deeper into the culture of the people in the country, certainly you have to go through sport. So I thank you for being Uganda's almost #1. And also I thank you for going into sport, you know, sponsoring KCCA and looking for the women. Like KCCA is headed by a woman, the CEO is a woman, the third vice president of FUFA is a woman. So good morning, SEETv.
Well, we are doing the best we can, and thank you for joining us this morning on Sunrise at Sea. Now, looking at the center of discussion today, and we're looking at empowering the girl child. My first question would be, how do you feel about the Women's History Month and its impact on celebrating Ugandan women?
Thank you very much. You know, it hails way back from the family. What you see as a woman is actually divided into 3 parts. The woman is divided into 3 parts by definition. There is someone called a female, then there is someone called a girl, and there's someone called a mother. So those 2 things are pretty much different. So a female is by default. Actually, you do not decide to be a female. You're either born like that, or even a plant. A plant is sowed like that, and it turns to be a female. So you have no choice. You didn't have to participate in that. When you're a girl, that is when you're now growing and you're taking choices, which can be either detrimental or beneficial to your future. So this is the girl child, and the teenager is all in that category. So becoming a mother now is what is by character. And the fruits of you. Are you kind? Are you supportive? Are you nursing others? Are you helping people? Are you listening? Are you you know, coordinating and mobilizing like the Mother Mary? So that is the whole lot of person that brings forth the generation. So some people did not become mothers. They stopped at being a girl. So you see people who are adults and they have given birth, but they are simply girls. They cannot put into being, they cannot nurture, they cannot mobilize, they are not kind, they're not all those things. So now we are looking at one part now, which is either the teenage, and we are saying that the problem comes from the home, or the benefits come from the home. So when we are looking at the history and the month, we are looking at people, some people who know their rights, some people who have gotten the infrastructure, some people who have been empowered, but while another lot of it are still below the margin line. So we are looking at house girls who are not allowed to come and watch SEETv in the sitting room. When you come and peep, they tell you, go back. So we are looking at dropouts, we are looking at teenage pregnancies. So that is a whole lot of a history that mounts into Uganda's bigger part of the population, being 51% of people who are female, but almost 62% with a little bit of question marks. Yeah.
Well, I am very well aware of the kind of profound work that you have done towards empowering the youth in the country. Now, I would like to ask you, and there's something that you mentioned in regard to parents and guardians. Do you think parents, guardians, political leaders, community leaders, religious leaders have not played a role when it comes to empowering the girl child?
Thank you. I would say, and really without any fear of contradiction, I say there's a lot that is missing. When you take one district, for example, take a district in Uganda. One district has over, the entire nation has over 500,000 women leaders in the country. Given the fact that there is a council at every village, and the secretary of the LC1 must be a woman. Then you take into account the whole of the National Women's Council. Then you take into account the women members of parliament. You take into account all this whole line of people. If you add them together, they form up 500,000 people who are women leaders. Now, if the women in Uganda are approximately 22 million people, then if each one is responsible for about 4 or 5, you would not see problems coming from the village to people saying that I would need to see the president, to people saying that I need to see Honorable Nakiwala to solve my problem. You have seen them across the board on TVs, on radios, and people are saying I need to see. Right now, they come to my gate doorways, they refuse to move away. How come they have all that yelling when in actual sense, 500 million people are women leaders? So it means that some people have been given the empowerment to become leaders, but they have not reserved a day or two to attend to their fellow women. My day, Tuesday, was a day to attend to women. So yes, that day on Tuesday, I don't have a secretary, I don't have anybody. I stand at the reception and I receive ladies. You must be a lady to attract my attention. And I listen to you. When you tell me your problem, I can jump on a boda and follow you. I can go, we trace your husband. I can go to school and we look for that child where they told you never go to see the child you mothered because some other woman is taking care. So I will go and look for that man who took your money when you're working abroad in winter and you sent your money to him. I would go and look for that man who is sending you out of the home with your children. So if all women could not say that because we are women and we have been told to campaign and become leaders, that's not the point. The point is what comes out of that position that you're sitting in. How many people's lives have you touched? How many souls have you healed? How many children have you thrown a rope for them to climb on? I think that is more important than counting positions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, in your perspective and opinion, would you say the girl child has been empowered not just in education, but also when it comes to their social life?
Thank you. Pretty much, we have to draw back to the Constitution.
Yes.
That the power to bring up a person below the age of 18 primarily rests on the parents, or guardians, or caretakers. So it's very complicated for the government to go into your house and tell you to breastfeed, say, after midnight. It's practically impossible. So we entrust the duty of socially bringing up this kind of person with the parent. So should, in that likely event that the parent fails to complete that gap, then that's where we have all these challenges coming up. So the people in that gap that we have delegated the responsibility to, majority of them have failed, either because of the psychosocial problems that they go through, that you find that the mother sleeps on the duty like it was in COVID. The parents were sleeping at the marketplace, and then the girl could be in the house with the maid or houseboy. Then you could find that almost 17% of the children are with their grannies. The grannies who have lost sight, they can no longer see. Then you find that 29% of the children do not know their fathers. Either their fathers are in institutions that don't allow them to give birth, and they did it behind the bar, and they can never declare to them that that's your father anyway. So there are so many people who are simply disgruntled. They
Yes.
don't know where they're coming from. They're on the streets. Like Kampala has over 10,000 people. And the last 3 months, this figure is kind of coming to 20% increase. So you find that in this kind of delegation where the responsibility is delegated to the parents, it's very, very hard. The child is on the phone. The best friend is a phone. The message comes from the phone to the brain and to the stomach. So the intervention for parents is minimal. And in the past 2 years, even the intervention of the teachers went down to zero, was discounted to zero. That there was no mediator to bring these people close, to tell them, hey, you're not putting on an underwear. You're just moving like that. A man doesn't move like that. So you didn't comb your hair. So that kind of gap was completely blocked. Now we have to triple our effort if we are to delegate the power of parenting to this kind of population. It's kind of laxed. They do not know. Some of them have tried. You find them with children at the back, supporting them, and with firewood on the head side, but their minds are not on that child. Their minds are thinking about the man who did not care at night or something. So the whole thing is upside down.
I like the fact that you actually highlighted on the fact that nowadays, especially when it comes to the youth of today, their best friends have actually become their phones. They learn from their phones, and you can clearly see that there is a gap in there, and there needs to be a moderator, either a parent or a guardian. However, are there any current programs that are undergoing in regard to empowering the girl child, and has there been sensitization and awareness of some of these programs?
Absolutely. They have been drafting and fully saturated the parenting guidelines. So there are those guidelines, and take it from me, those who are watching SEETv, that Uganda is almost #1 in Africa in drafting and having very good policies and regulations for the children management. And they have been used as a case study. They have been benchmarking in Uganda. Liberia came down to benchmark and all that. But these laws, there's no enforcement. As I've told you, there's a gap between the regulators and the grassroots. Either people fear the grassroots, they have made so many promises and they can no longer go down to touch the hearts of those people. They have left the work to NGOs, and some NGOs are simply now also turning into business. So those guidelines are not known. The people do not know how they should, because now the youngest grandmother in Africa is in Uganda. She was, I think, 21 by the other time. I think now she's 23. A grandmother, you can imagine. So the person fathered and also that one fathered. So you can imagine that kind of parenting. That one needs guidelines. It was in Eastern Uganda. That one needs guidelines, and being almost a baby giving birth to a baby, and later on a baby giving birth, having a grandbaby. So that is a very, very dangerous situation, that Uganda being #1 youngest country in the Commonwealth, because for about 5 years, I was the chairperson of all youth ministers in the Commonwealth countries across the board. So I have a lot of statistics, I have a lot of knowledge, and I compared Uganda to being #1 in paperwork, and almost, I don't know what number in kind of implementation, that you find that someone does not know that killing my child is an offense. The person thinks that I can beat up a child who has stolen sugar and beat that child to death, and I walk away at large. So that is what they think. And when you call someone to the police, said, but this is my family. I mean, Nakiwala, why are you bothered? So that is something that is very dangerous. But in developed world, the child is independent, you dial something and you're caught. So here you tell them dial 116, toll free, and you're caught. They say it's a joke. So I think there is a gap. That is about the mindset.
Okay, you have indeed highlighted some critical issues in there, but your last remarks and of course a message to the young girls that could be watching SEETv this morning, what would you like to tell them?
Absolutely. It's not all lost. I was like them. We went through this kind of turbulence where we didn't even have primary level sitting exams. We simply passed from P7 to S1. So those who are saying we sat at home, we didn't go to school in COVID, that's not a point. I was barefoot at one point in time. I went to school. I went through all that. They cannot tell us that they are either more beautiful than we were or something. There is no excuse to excellence. Those who are watching SEETv, you simply have to keep tuning into SEETv to know the trending issues, to know that what is there that can make me as a girl successful. For me, I have been all those things. I've been a minister in Buganda Kingdom for close to 12 years. I have been all these things. I have been a leader, board member, diplomatic corps member. So all those things mean that you must be disciplined. It's not about money, because we came from that generation which was not money related, but it was discipline related. It's not about wealth. If you have your menstruation, get a piece of cloth. Don't wait for government or CCTV to come and give you a sanitary pad. So there is no excuse. Keep it until you're there in marriage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable, for honoring our invitation and for joining us this morning live on SEETv. We also appreciate the profound work that you do towards empowering the girl child, but also the youth in Uganda. Well, that was none other than Honorable Florence Nakiwala Kiyingi, that is the Minister of State for Youth and Children Affairs. Now, Sandra, you did hear that particular conversation, those profound words that the minister had to say. And I like the fact that she pointed out that it should not be an excuse that you have been at home for decades. You should still go ahead, gather yourself up, and go back to school. If the resources are there, then you can go back to school. If the resources are not there, you can have, hands-on skills. And I think that is very important.
Yes, and also don't give up. I love that what she said. She has been through a lot. She was even barefoot at some point.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at her. This is a mover and shaker in her own right.
Absolutely.
So I think you should never give up. Never give up. Where there is a will, there is a way. It all begins with you.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up the conversation that we had for you this morning on the Twitter Jabs. I hope that you are able to pick a thing or two, especially for the girl child out there. It doesn't matter who you are today. What matters is that you stay focused and make sure that you are moving towards achieving your dreams and ambition. Right next, I sit down with the good doctor and we're going to be discussing anxiety attacks. So keep watching Sunrise at Sea.